Okay. Hi, Gloria. That was crazy. I thought I've done StreamYard before, and I thought it would be simple enough to get back on, but it wasn't. I I kept getting stuck in something that I couldn't get out of. So I am here, and I'm going to have to read all the comments on on YouTube, which aren't as easy to read as they are on StreamYard, but I don't know how to make them stay. That's the deal. So they appear and then they disappear. But hi, always happens. Yeah, thanks. So I'm a few minutes late. Yes, hi. So I had a nice description all typed out in StreamYard, and then it disappeared when I touched something. So I'm always like just so nervous. So you guys, I have notes that I've been taking, and yeah. So I thought that I could discuss the history of the carnivore diet. And the reason I've been looking, well, I've been studying the history of diets that were recommended to diabetics before insulin was discovered, and I've been doing this with Dr. Nelson, but it kind of jogged my brain about, maybe I just need to go on and go over the history of just the carnivore diet. And I'm finding it really interesting because, well, when I get to it, but we all, if you're interested in the carnivore diet and you've studied any of it at all, you kind of, well, ancestral man, they were carnivores unless there was, they were hunting animals, unless maybe they could find some tubers to eat when they couldn't find animals. But basically, we were carnivores early on. And, and there was, cave paintings to prove it. Like they always drew cave paintings or painted cave paintings of the hunt. And, so we don't know that much. But in history, it seems like the first time that the carnivore diet was used by a doctor on his patients was in the 1600s, and this guy Thomas Sydenham lived from 1624 to 1689, and he prescribed an all-meat diet. We don't know a whole lot more than that, but and then the next, I have notes, but it's a little confusing because I didn't do a great job of taking notes. And I've had AI to help me a little bit, but then I wrote it all out, so, And then, and there's crossovers between what they did for diabetics and what they did for just people who were sick or overweight, which is kind of interesting because there's this crossover. Like, they somehow knew that an all-meat diet would heal people, but they also knew that it would lower the sugar. They didn't do blood sugar back then, but they knew that diabetics had sweet urine. So they knew that an all-meat diet would keep their urine from being sweet. So, but they also knew that it made people or helped people lose weight if they wanted to, and it helped other things too, like arthritis and digestive issues and things like that. Hi, Terry. So anyway, the next guy was John Rollo, and he is mentioned in diabetes literature as being, he was 1790s, and he was mentioned in the history of diabetes, specifically type 1 diabetes, but also type 2. They didn't know there was a difference. Sometimes they would call it severe for the type 1s, but sometimes they wouldn't differentiate. So he prescribed eggs, boiled meat, cheese, beef tea, which I would think is, bone broth or meat broth or bouillon, whatever you want to call it, and no vegetable food. That was part of the diet, no vegetable food. So, and then this guy, Apollinaire Bouchard, continued his work. So that was a little bit later, and then it gets really confusing. Let's see. And then there's James Lomax Bardsley, 1830s, and he prescribed mostly an animal food diet. I mean, you could go back and look these people up. There's more discussions about it because they actually were writing about it. So that's the thing about following it through doctors, because the doctors were the ones who were writing about it. And so then Arnaldo Cantani, 1870, he prescribed meat and animal fats and fish and shellfish and eggs. And then we're not to him yet. So I think the next one is John Henry Salisbury of the Salisbury State guy. He was, when we read about him, I have 2 books about his method. This is one of his patients, Elma Fraser Stewart, and she wrote What Must I Do to Get Well and How to Keep It So. And she had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue that didn't have a name yet, but that's what she basically had. And then this is his book, The Relation of Alimentation and Disease. Alimentation just means digestion. So he not only kind of experimented on prisoners in the Civil War, that's like his big important work was during the Civil War. Hi, Bacon Runner. Hi, Donna Ray. But he was already experimenting with diet starting in 1823, and his work continued until 1905. But in 1854, he wrote about lean beef and hot water, and then he also added, depending on the health of the individual, he added lamb, mutton, fish, poultry, or oysters, depending on which disease he was treating. But during the Civil War, he, like I said, he had the injured men who was not doing very well. They'd get horrible diseases if they weren't even wounded in the Civil War. They'd get horrible diarrhea and whatever those things are called, and they would put them all on an all-meat diet. And it was the reason why Salisbury steak got famous, well, not by why it got famous, but why it was a thing, was because he thought that freshly ground meat was easier for these men to digest. So that's where his, that's supposed, like if you do a Salisbury steak, it's supposed to be freshly um, ground. And so if you were going to follow his diet with his book, because he wrote the book, I should look up. Let's see when this was first published. I love old books. Oh, I'm supposed to be able to see that? It's really little. I think it says 1888 or 18 something, 1880 something. Boy, I need these are already way. I might say 1884. I don't know. It's 1880 something. It's tiny, y'all, tiny. Okay, so if you were his patient, you had okay, so the woman who wrote the book, Alma Stewart, she had a neighbor go to the butcher every day to get her fresh ground meat to eat, and she couldn't fix it herself until she started getting well. And so when she got well, she wrote the book about it. So you can get these books, they're reprinted. They're, most of the time the printing is like copies of the books, so sometimes it's not readable, but I like to read these old books. I love them. Okay, so then we jump over to, and there were other doctors who were following his method. So this is getting more well known even before Vilhjalmur Stefansson, the Arctic explorer, who was the next guy who became famous enough for us to take notice of, even though there were other doctors who were following Salisbury. Vilhjalmur Stefansson, I can't ever figure out how to say his name. He had been exploring the Arctic, and he met all these what do we call them? Not Eskimos. I can't think of what it's called, what we call them. But, the people that lived up there, y'all can help me. You write it down. I can't think of the word. The indigenous people that lived in the Arctic. He was stranded with them for a few years, and he made extensive notes because he was a very good explorer, and he took notice, and he noticed that they were Inuit. Thank you. I just couldn't think of the word, Inuit. So he noted that they ate huge amounts of fat and flesh, and there was no vegetation for them to eat, and they lived on fish and seal blubber and whale blubber and some protein, but it was a very high fat diet with fish. So anyway, they were all very healthy. When we see Inuit people, like old pictures of them, we can't tell they're healthy because they have so many coats on that they all look fat, but they weren't. My little preschool brain thought that. And so maybe some of us still don't think of them as being very fit, but they were very fit and very strong. And if you want to read about Stefansson's experiences, he wrote extensively. He wrote a couple of different books. You can look them up. So then when he came back and he claimed that he had existed for years on this all fish and fat and meat diet, people didn't believe him. So they had him, he and another one of the explorers that I can't ever remember his name, they did I think it's Bellevue, right? Is that what the name of it was? they did a hospital experiment for a whole year. They put them in the hospital, and they monitored the food that they ate, and they ate beef fat, emphasizing the fat, because they did it for a while and he didn't have enough fat and he didn't feel good, so they thought they had disproved it. But then when he was allowed to eat more fat, he got healthy again. And so then it was beef fat, beef tongue, liver, brains, and marrow. And that was the diet that they went on for the whole year. And they're, at the end of the year, and that was 1928. At the end of the year, they were super healthy, and it was written about, but it was also a little bit swept under the rug because it didn't become popular just because somebody wrote about it. So it's in his books. I don't know which one because I read them many years ago. Well, why would I read them many years ago? Okay, so I started studying this 8 years ago when I was, when I became interested. And so, I read them first thing. I read a lot of these. So anyway, so next, let me make sure. Next is Blake Donaldson, and I am toying with the idea of buying his book, Strong Medicine. It feels like I have it because I can see the cover of it, and I can't figure out why it's not with my books. So I haven't ordered it yet. You can get it, but it was written in 1962. Like, we were alive, right? It was written in 1962. And he put his patients on it. I'm thinking about buying it, but don't buy an expensive one. You can get it for $13, but you can also get it for like $170. So, shop around if you want to buy this book because, there's deals that you can get, and I might buy the $13 one. I'm just not sure that it's. Has anybody read it? Oh, well, sorry. Who was that? Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. So interesting. So not all of us were. I think of myself as your peers, but I see that at 72. I am not all your peers, and I apologize. Some of you might have been around, but I was born in 54, so sorry for assuming. But, close. Strong Medicine in 1962, and he prescribed fatty meat and water and exercise. And basically 3 fatty steaks, water, and coffee. So yay, coffee. That was the first time it was mentioned in all of this. So, let me see, just a minute. But modern, closer to our time. Actually, okay, so there's this guy, and he has writings too, and I have read on and off a little bit of different writings, but not the whole thing. And I could go back and read it, but it's kind of stream of consciousness, and it's hard to read. Owsley Stanley, he was called the Bear. He was the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, and he was a carnivore. And he lived between 1935 to 2011. And so, but in 2011, he was killed in a car crash. So we don't have any up-to-date writings, but he did write about the carnivore diet. And I think his thing was, and maybe why he didn't become popular, one is because he died, and two is because it was raw meat and raw fat, and raw eggs, and I can't read my own handwriting. And lots of fat. So raw fat, raw meat, raw eggs. And he emphasized the fat. So, but there are, and we know of outliers who, they may not be doctors, but they're people that they're kind of coming out of the woodwork, like Maggie the rancher, who's been eating carnivore for 65 or more years. There is Rick Rodriguez in Miami. Well, she is a rancher her name is Maggie White. You can look her up, Maggie White. She lives in Alberta, Canada, and she's a rancher. And she's 85, I think. Well, I think we all know about her. But, you know, if you watch this later, and she's pretty much ate like this almost her whole life. So, and then there's Rick Rodriguez in Miami, who, out of total defiance, he thought he discovered a diet that could kill him or make him sick enough so he wouldn't have to go to school. So he started eating the carnivore diet when he was 15, and he is 58. So, and then I've heard a few other people who've been eating carnivore for a long time. There was somebody on Dave Mack's channel that she had eaten that way for 50 years. But the interview, she wasn't really totally carnivore, and so I didn't really count her. But and then I forgot. Let me see if I wrote any of this stuff down. Well, okay, so sorry, I might have gotten ahead of myself a little bit. Well, where this intersects with the diet that they put diabetics on is because this was in the medical literature, the eating of fatty meat to heal. And so I think, but it's not really written about this, because what they do is they kind of separate that this is what they did for diabetics and this is just history of the carnivore diet. But I really think there was a lot of overlap. I think some of these people that were treating type 1 diabetics back before they discovered insulin in 1922 must have known about these other doctors that I've just talked about. So like Elliot Joslin and Dr. Allen and some of the other doctors who were trying to save dying children from type 1 diabetes before 1922 must have known about all these diets and were going to try them. Now, they varied those diets because they didn't use them. Maybe they tried to use them as curative, which meant that you ate as much as you needed to eat. And you would heal certain conditions. Well, for diabetes, what they did was they gave them just enough to keep them alive, because they were trying to get their urine sugar to not have any, for their urine to not have any sugar in it. So they barely gave them enough to exist. Like they give them just enough so they wouldn't die. And that's how they treated children with type 1 diabetes before they introduced insulin. But to get back to, I forgot to look up when Charles Washington, at first, Charles Washington, he's like the founder of the modern carnivore diet. I think it was about 2008. I'm not sure. Does anybody know what year he founded? I should have looked that up. Zeroing in on health. At first it was a forum, and you hear people like Kelly Hogan talking about it. At first it was a forum, and people just wrote their experiences, and they were mostly all eating beef, salt, and water. 2009. Okay, cool. Oh, really? And I had discovered, it's kind of interesting, but I had discovered zeroing in on health in 2010 while I was researching the ketogenic diet. And I read all about the members, and I read about Charles Washington and Dana Spencer and Kelly Hogan and Charlene and Joe Anderson. I read all the things, and I don't know why I didn't just jump in to do the carnivore diet too, but I think in my brain it was like I was researching keto, and so I didn't even see it as a possibility. Oh wow, that's so cool, Juliet. See, I didn't even try it. It didn't even enter my mind to try it, which is so weird. It's just so weird to me because it's like, oh, why didn't I do it back then, you know? But I didn't. And so anyway, Charles was the moderate. Well, he was like he started it. This forum. And he kind of advised people on the diet. And I remember things like Kelly Hogan saying she was worried about when she was pregnant, and would it be okay to stay on the all meat diet? And he's like, are you human? Didn't humans, if you lived in a cave a really long time ago, wouldn't you be eating just meat? And she's like, okay. So Charles was like their leader, their head. And he is not very active. Every now and then I see a post from him, but he's not as active on social media. I think his name is Chaz Zero on Instagram. And every now and then, several years ago, maybe about 7 years ago, there is a couple of interviews with him. I listened to one last week when Dr. Baker and what's his name? When they had the earlier podcast that I can't think of the name of it, and I just listened to it. Somebody Bittner, the runner, when they were together on that podcast. Anyway, they interviewed Charles Washington. It's a pretty interesting interview. So these diets varied. Like some allowed eggs, some didn't. It depended on the disease. There is a lineage that goes all the way through from the beginning of time, but there's writings about it starting in the 1600s all the way through. And so what I did, and I should look again, I don't know if I'm going to look while y'all are here, but I could probably look really fast. I went on, let's see, let me just see if there's anything else. Okay, so there, that's a reacted, so no more comments. Okay, so I remember Charles and Jimmy Moore, were the We're in constant battle. Keto versus zero carb. Oh, right. Well, yes, yes. So zeroing in on health was a subset for with Jimmy Moore and what was the name? His low carb, Levita low carb, but they separated because they didn't agree on stuff. But after Dr. Sean Baker wrote his book naming this movement that he already knew was going on because he was on the Zeroing In on Health Facebook page, and that's where he got the idea. He named it the Carnivore Diet. So that's why we have the name now. And we have so many more doctors and people writing about it, and now we have YouTube where there's so much information about it. What I wanted to say is at least 8 years ago, Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, used the Lion Diet to put into remission her depression and rheumatoid arthritis. And she's become very famous for this and for naming that particular part of the carnivore diet the Lion Diet. And so she has found that healed her, and she's actually been adding a few different foods, but always knowing she can go back to. I haven't paid attention lately about hers, but Joe and Charlene Anderson definitely do the Lion Diet, and they eat ribeyes every day. So I go back and forth. I'm Lion Diet right now, trying to see how low I can get my needs of insulin, because I've had type 1 diabetes for 55 years this year. So right now in August, and most of y'all know that, right now in August I'm doing the Lion Diet. And for some reason my blood sugar is high all day today after breakfast. And I was trying to use just not eating and walking to bring it down, and it's not low enough yet, so I may end up having to take some insulin. But I went on the Lion Diet Facebook page. If anybody is trying to heal something really serious and just basic carnivore isn't healing you, you might want to go on the Lion Diet, which is ruminant animals, salt, and water. And salt is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't do well on salt. And I went on there, I think it was Wednesday, so 2 days ago. I don't think it has to do with the heat. I think what I'm thinking is that maybe my insulin for my breakfast did not go in well, or I sat too long doing social media after breakfast. Even though I don't need very much insulin and I'm very insulin sensitive, it also means that I'm very sensitive to when things don't go right. So it's in the oh, okay, Gloria, bye. I'm almost finished. I went on the Lion Diet Facebook page and I asked them, what has anybody healed? Because I'm studying the history of it, and I want to know what have you been able to heal on the Lion Diet. I'm hoping I'm making the connections, but so the first one we've already talked about, rheumatoid arthritis. So I have a long list, and the list is long. Look, it's actually more than one page. RA, rheumatoid arthritis, uveitis, which is, and I learned so much about health studying the carnivore diet. Uveitis is so itis at the end of a word, it means inflammation. So the uvea it's in the eye. It's a part of the eye. So it's an inflammation inside of the eyeball. So it's healed completely on the lion diet. Ankylosing spondylitis, and I kind of know what that is, but it's a very serious disease that is thought to be incurable, and it completely healed for someone who was writing. These are all the comments that I got. This is what I healed for myself. Chronic shingles, stage 4 endometriosis, and along with that, she says melting a grapefruit sized endometrioma on an ovary. So I think that's like a tumor on an ovary. It melted. Okay, MCAS, that's something about mast cell activation syndrome. Oh, I know it. MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, a very serious disease as well, thought to be incurable. Fibromyalgia, chronic hives, chronic psoriasis, bloating, depression, anxiety, tachycardia, which I don't know what that is. If anybody knows that's here, that'd be great. Knee and shoulder pain resolved, healed gums in their mouth, healed all my joint pain, healed sciatica, neuralgia? That doesn't sound right. And that's some kind of inflammation too. Parasthenica. I don't know. I can spell it. Parasthetica. Can't say it. Parasthetica. What is that? I don't know. I'll look it up. I should have looked it up so I could sound smart. Migraines, GERD, which is acid reflux, improved vision, and improved motility. So that's what I got from them. And I've heard, there's one more I wanted to say that nobody there said it, but I also know that psoriatic arthritis. I was trying to think of that. So that's like, you have psoriasis really, really bad, but you also have horrible achy joints, and it's almost like a combination of psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. So anyway, there's the list that we came up with of what heals on the lion diet. And you notice that nobody said type 1 diabetes. So basically the reason I keep going back to the lion diet is because I thought that it would heal me and I wouldn't have to take insulin anymore. And then actually going back and studying these diets that the doctors had put these dying children on to keep them alive a little bit longer was basically the lion diet. And they didn't heal, they just kept them alive so that they, and then when they gave them insulin, they all healed. So not healed, but, and they still have to take insulin, just like I do. I have to take it 5 times a day at least. But the reason I keep coming back to it is because it's the closest thing that will heal different things and allows me to take less and less insulin, and I feel the best on it. I don't feel bad if I eat eggs and bacon and butter. That's the only thing I'm not eating when I'm on the lion diet. There was an interview with Richard Smith where he talked about how much better lamb was to heal than beef. not knowing exactly why, but it may be because it's much higher in omega-3s, but there's other reasons too. And the first time I did the lion diet, hello, Bill. The first time I did the lion diet, I got my insulin needs down very, very low, and I was eating a lot of lamb. The other times that I've done the lion diet, I haven't done lamb because I've been doing it on my own, and lamb is expensive. So, you know, anyway, so that is pretty much my whole report about this. And what I want to do is September is soon. We have another week of August, and then after that, September, my group coaching renews every month on the 1st. So if you want to be in my group, oh no, really? Reconnecting? Okay, I guess it's back. Oh, I thought it was gonna die. Okay, so if you want to be in my group, let me know, and I will get you in. So, I will end this like I end all my videos on Instagram and Facebook. Be good, eat meat, and love everybody. Thank you so much. Yeah, mine's not caffeinated, and I have been having it in the morning. Thank you, Juliet. I've been having it in the morning, but I've also had explosive diarrhea after I drank my decaf, so it may not be, I may not keep doing it. I don't know. But be good, eat meat, and love everybody. Thank you so much, you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.